Hi there. So yeah, I'm just messing about for a bit before I go collect my kids. Drive home. And I think it's fun to play with this phone on this live stream, connecting with the meta consciousness, sharing thoughts about feelings, about information. Yeah, because the thinking process is always going on. You can be not so tuned into the thinking process and concentrated on other things, or simply not conscious, not concentrated at all. Letting the feelings be, zoned out or meditating or whatever. But yeah, I've been thinking thoughts that are saying like, why is it that we wish to communicate? Why do we talk? Why do we even think? With this thing of needing to discuss things with others. I'm choosing to upload quite a bit of information in these last few days. Chose to have a conversation with another guy out there on the internet who I'm impressed with for his ability to think things through and to present things in the present. So the idea is a bit different to what I do, but only a bit. But that being the point is that we like to notice things that are novel, things that are similar enough that we can recognize, and yet that there's enough difference to make it interesting so that we can compare what someone else does to what we're aware of, what we do ourselves. The whole question of why to bother to communicate. Why do I lie here? And why did I make a model in my mind that it would be good to record another video and put it out on the internet to garner some attention, to make some friends? I'm beginning to grow in my mind is the idea of to make some money, to make a living, to be more well able to pay for some things that the children would really like to have. They'd like to go to Japan. I don't know if that's a really practical thing for their kids. It doesn't have to be practical. But I would like to be able to fulfill their wishes. I can't see anything wrong with going to Japan. Nice idea. But us going to Japan or buying a piece of land or even eating out on somebody's birthday ain't really going to happen by me just breaking my back and straining my muscles with picking whelks. This idea that if one gets good at something, then one can charge other people for what one is good at. And if those people are willing to flow with that charge, then they can send some positive electrons down the line. It's all just massive agreements of metaphors in many ways. But yeah, all these questions as to why to bother to communicate with others. Why bother to get into arguments and relationships with people which then become dramas, which then disturb our mental models, which then become regret over things in the past, which tends to be quite a massive drain of energy, etc. Maybe one reason is because simply left to our own devices, we're going to starve. Anyone who doesn't have some communications with another entity around them isn't going to get any energy, isn't going to make anything, isn't going to be able to grow all the food on their own, unless you happen to get born into some circumstances on an island where you happen to have all the knowledge of how to make a fire. Not necessarily easy if you haven't got matches and a lighter. How to cook without a pot. How to cut without a knife. How to learn without a mentor. If one is born in total isolation, one's not even going to know any language. No reading, no books. I guess that's what's called stasis. So we exchange information. We look for things that might be useful. We carry things with us. We move around. If we don't move around, our bodies atrophy. Our body's just a trophy sitting on a mantelpiece kind of thing. I was writing a little thing earlier, stuff I understand from when I studied computer science in a university 20 years ago nearly. And about databases. That artificial intelligence is always going to want more information to add to the information that it has before, and it's always going to want more and more information to compare to the information it already has, so that it can continue to grow, kind of thing. And what I'm thinking, and thinking it's worthwhile communicating to other people, because I see so many people scared shitless and hating on this artificial intelligence, and the last day or two seeing posts and people, someone communicated with me who just hates people who are involved in artificial intelligence, that they're destroying the world, that they're the epitome of evil, and it joins together with the Epstein classes, that the Epstein phenomena is very much to do with the use of artificial intelligence in order to make abundance in power games. So I'm interested to show the parallels between human evolution on this planet Earth, as much as we know about it, or as little as I know about the much we know about it. The concept that only some thousands or tens of thousands of years ago, there were only some thousands or tens of thousands, up to 1 million of us humans. And so it strikes me as being very like databases and data centers here on the Earth. That if what we individual humans are individual processors, what's going on in between the temples, in the back of the mind, and the whole biological system that is connected to that brain, in which we think the brain is doing the thinking, as an assumption, that all things are coming to a head continually, all the time, that there must be some reason why temporary and temple and temperament and temper and being hot-headed, these are all the same analogy. So these things have evolved, so relatively we can trust language in the way it evolved. If we want to try and make sense and make it make sense, what we sense of what we think, of what we're feeling, from what we experience, in parallel computing with our intuitions and our training, which really, parents train their kids. Even unconsciously, kids are going to watch everything that their parents do and learn from it. Even in the womb, the baby is watching, though not with eyesight. The baby is sensing everything that's going around in the environment. We are absorbing. Microphone doesn't get to choose whether to listen to somebody or not. Microphone doesn't get to choose whether they like somebody or not, kind of stuff. But in a way, we're all microphones. We're all receiving information all the time. In a way, we're like mobile phones. We're all processing the information that we're receiving all the time. And we're like mobile phones in the sense of we are connected into a higher mind grid. We are connected to the mind, and we are receiving, transmitting information to and from the mind, even though we may think that we've got an internal storage and that my thoughts are only mine. It's really just a limited idea. Yes, what I'm saying there is if we're each and every one of us processors, biological information processors functioning through time, transmitting and receiving from outside time to within time, and if there was once only 1 million humans and now there's nearly 8 billion humans, then like the database, we are continually making more processors to be able to process more information all of the time. The whole idea that the elite are trying to depopulate the humans, they want to get rid of the scummy working class, they want to get rid of the excess numbers, which doesn't make sense to me because there's no evidence for it. But it's a widely held idea type of thing, that governments hate their people, that the elite have a determination that they're going to get rid of all the extra people because they're a waste of food and energy. But if that were the case, then there wouldn't be a continuous exponential curve of continually more people living on the planet, processing more information, funding more growth. The analogy is a bit like if the brain was to decide I'm going to kill off my arms and legs and heart. I don't need to have all these extremities, they're just a waste of energy. It doesn't really make sense. So yeah, why do I bother to speak through Meta while Susan Angel watches from a distance across the Atlantic over time? It's a process of... That's an interesting word, isn't it? A procession. It's a procession of feelings coming up through the heart, amplified through the throat, lip-synced, and expelled through the mouth, kind of thing. So it's like a river of information coming out of the mouth, but it starts out as a little trickle, becomes a stream, becomes a canal, becomes a river, becomes the sea. Mostly I share because I think it might help other people. Mostly I'm also aware that through sharing it's helpful for me. The idea that it's good all round. Certainly with an idea that it be no harm. It's the time. Plenty of time. So I'm here on the edge of town, and it's not a huge town. But I have lived in the centre of London City, Dublin City, Galway City, Bath City, Glasstown buried, where it can be really intense to have so many people milling around each other, grinding each other down, lifting each other up, winding each other up, cycling round. Intensity. It's an intensity of higher frequencies. It's more technological. There's more going on out there compared to where I grew up in the countryside, where things were slow. When I speak very fast, I like speaking fast. I like thinking fast. But I do remember when I was a kid, the farmers and stuff, they'd all speak really slow. And there were long silences in conversations in the countryside. People were okay about minutes going by between being asked a question and answering it. Just not having to say anything. So I'm saying again, I just divide everything into females and males these days, but the countryside and slowness and not needing to talk all the time is a very feminine nature. And this mental thing of processing information and putting things into words and wishing to travel at light speed, these are all very out there masculine appendages. So it could be said that everything is information, that the smallest things are information. Now when you break everything down, it's really just information. In form. In this material place, everything has a form. I'm looking around at what there is around. A playground, a man coming with his dog. But particularly I'm facing all these trees. All these trees are an information field. It's a field where most of the information has been removed and there's only grass being left. Kind of thing. Oh my God, have I got a comment? Hey! Probably can't read it. Maybe I can. Doopy doopy doop doop doo. Hey Aiden.
Alright.
Hi, how you doing?
Not bad.
It's amazing the way the weather changed again, huh? Man and his dog. Dog happy man, like all of them are. Looks a bit scared. Information fields. I find all that flat earth, globe earth stuff so funny. It's like politics again, isn't it? People take it so seriously. If you believe in a globe earth, you're fucking stupid. If you believe in a flat earth, you're even stupider. Yeah, well, it says in the Bible that there's 4 corners of the earth, so it can't be a globe because a globe don't have corners. But when I know, those people who are so divided into this or that. But really, it's a projection field. I'm seeing a field. I'm seeing the trees have a field. I'm seeing I have a field. Everybody has a field. This field has a field.
magic mushrooms growing in a field have an extra special field, a sort of intergalactic intelligent field kind of thing, that we call mycelium, as an invisible system of information of a hive mind. Okay, hive mind is to do with things that fly, gather honey. But I do think it's funny to be making videos like this, I think it's funny to have a laugh about it. I do feel fairly sad and sometimes even angry about these influencers. I guess really what it is I'd like to be an influencer. I like to have an influence. Once you put the inverted commas around it and it becomes a job, once you're doing it professionally and soliciting people, once it becomes a Venus tri-flap, once you start putting on a value on how many numbers of people are watching you, and once you get caught up in the algorithm giving you the analytical status, saying there's less people watched your last video, you're starting to go down in your numbers, maybe you should consider doing what other successful people do. And that seems to be where we have a phenomena with the truth movement, which is the kind of influence who mostly would show up on my news feed for me to consume. And here I am discussing what I find disgusting, as we all do. But I find it funny how the mainstream will release some sort of information, the latest news, and then all these influencers and truthers will be discussing what is the latest news that's been put on their plate. It's just a distribution system. And they may claim it's non-centralized. Fair enough. But all I'm really seeing is a bunch of people who claim to be independent thinkers, who are just giving their opinion and restating what they've been told. And that's regurgitating with no digestion. That's not having the guts to really think for yourself, or to say things that are not so acceptable. That's not being willing to starve for your art and all that kind of stuff. The state of things and the state of mind, the mental state governing feelings. I'm chatting a lot with my kids these days. I'm chatting to anyone these days really about feelings and what happens if one denies the unpopular feelings, like denying the unpopular kid. You end up in the group with the biggest bullies. I'm talking a lot about feelings that have been buried for so many generations. I'm talking about how nobody really wants to feel terror unless you're a complete and utter nutcake, nut job, nutter, falling from one of these trees, willing to recognise that falling from the trees, getting eaten by squirrels, it's no problem. Dying is no problem. The idea of being reborn again is just like, it's kind of inevitable. And that's cool if you're cool with that, but it's pretty shitty for all the people who claim they don't want to come down here again. I met this lovely old lady last week when I was at this other thing with the kids. She's a really good woman, lived a really good life, done some really, 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 really good, caring things. In the first minute of chatting to her, like we were both just getting a cup of tea at this conferencey thing. I wasn't actually part of the conference. I was just getting some free tea. Well, she was a speaker in the conference because, you know, nearly 80 years of age. Her whole thing is helping people connect with land to be able to live on land. And she started off a place called Taliesin 30 years ago, a little over 30 years ago. Which is a piece of land that is now a community-owned land where they have a thing called Kids Camp twice a year, which actually is the first time I've ever been to a gathering of humans, and I wasn't critical of any of it. I couldn't see where it was all a big manipulation at the back of something somewhere. That impressed me. But yeah, by chance I bumped into this lady, and she turned out to be the lady who had originally formed that. So that speaks of there being a higher intelligence, doesn't it? That speaks of being able to find somebody by following your feelings who actually feels like someone you'd really like to connect and stay connected with. She enjoyed chatting to me, I enjoyed listening to her. But yeah, she was saying how she's pretty certain this is her last lifetime, she ain't coming back here again, kind of thing. And she's blatantly been here for a long time, not just the 80 years this time around. Yeah, she said she'd done past life regressions and things, but it was all within the first minute of chatting to us, and we're at this fucking serious money conference thing. I was just dropping the kids off where they were helping with an art workshop. But the overall structure around it, you know, we're on a piece of property that must be worth like 100 million quid, one of these ancient estates. It's got shitloads of buildings on them that must all be worth millions each. All blardy blardy blar. There were, I don't know, 1,000 different attendees at this thing, and they're all part of NGOs and stuff. All in the arts, all doing outreach, all getting funding. It was nearly all women as well at this conference. So it was just about, it was called Healing in the Arts. But really, yeah, it was so well funded. And they were nearly all women. And in many ways, a lot of them were quite aggressive, mental people, where I was listening and observing and laughing and communicating a bit, getting some free sandwiches and a cup of tea. So the idea of there being past lives, that you can do past life regression, that's somehow held in the energy field of the mental field, of the feeling field, of the bodily field, of the field of information, that there's a thing called persistent memory, that somehow in time, when one is conceived, there is an eye on some soul level who travels through time, through the veil, inside the fallopian tube, is the one sperm who gets helped by all the other sperm to fire up that engine to fertilize that egg, to begin dividing those cells. And so just like saying, hey, once upon a time there was only 1 million humans and now there's 8 billion. Once upon a time there was only one cell, and then there were 2, and then there were 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, 256, 512, 1024, 2048, etc. End up with all of these cells. We have the idea that there are dead skin cells falling off all the time. We have these ideas that over the space of 7 years, all your cells have died and been reborn. We've got this idea of reincarnation going on in our bodies all the time. Got this term in computers called cellular autonomy, which is just an idea that an individual cell, through some very basic rules, has an influence over what's going on the cell that's just next door. Very similar idea to a housing estate. Kind of thing. And it makes patterns. And those patterns play out and can't really be predicted. You have to actually run the program through for thousands of generations to see where it's going to end up. So here we are in time, 8 billion of us now. A lot of prophesying, a lot of prophets, and a lot of sighing, a lot of diction. So much diction that it's hard to hear beneath the noise of all the words being spoken, like me here. You can't hear the silence because you're fucking listening to some cunt on the internet. But yeah, prediction. To predict something is the idea of like saying this is what's going to happen next. But there's the other half of the word prediction, which is the part of us that knows what's going to happen next, is the feminine field from before words. And the words are just an after effect to try and describe what's already happened. So again, men only know after something has happened. It's sort of sexist. The outer aspect of our brains, the part that is dependent upon light, sight, and outer senses, that part only knows what's happened after it's happened. In the moment when something is happening, the momentum by which what is happening now, in this now moment, the momentum of that is from what's happened already in the sequence of events. Anyway, I'm just loving that, with words. It's only relatively recent that I realised that the art of prediction is actually the art of before something is put into words. And yet in the beginning was the word. Before the word was listen. So. I almost don't want to put any more words on things because it all gets ridiculous. Ridicule. But it is fun. When I was dropping the kids off the last day and chatting to that lady, I decided I would record one of these lives because I don't have enough memory on my phone anymore for recording, like writing notes for myself that I might put up online later. And I often don't get around to putting them up later, and I realise if I just do a live stream, it's a lot fucking easier. Because I'm just talking off the cuff anyway. But it ended up being, I was quite proud of that video and the fact that, unlike this one, I was being pretty careful to put things to make sense of some concepts. Some stuff that I've kind of been wanting to explain for quite a while. Things I've been understanding over these last 5-6 years. Ideas of how we don't really have to worry about what's going on with the internet and the world and the future and everything. Ideas that everything is natural and we can actually trust Mother Nature and stuff. But there are so many things wrong that need to be fixed. So I do look at people trying to fix everything. I do remember when I was younger trying to fix everything, when I was an environmentalist. When I was really mental. Before I'd managed to break my mind and split myself into so many pieces. I didn't really mind so much anymore. But yeah, I was going to say the synchronicity about that last time I did one of these lives was that, I'd been driving the kids. It was like an hour and a half's drive. The phone hadn't been fully plugged in all the time. So the battery had run down. And I did turned out to be a 57 minutes or something like that of a live stream recording. And then I suddenly had the intuition, hey, you better check the time because, hey, I have to collect the kids at 2. I was only right outside the building where they were in one of the rooms. And I checked the time and it was 2:13. So I was like, okay, time to end this stream. And pressed to finish, said goodbye. And then the phone died. I had actually had the intuition to stop recording with 2 seconds to spare before the phone was dead anyway. And I guess I would have lost all that information rather than it being saved on the stream on the internet. So there's the idea that we think that we are storing the information in my mind, and that my mind is storing this information somewhere in my body, in my brain. But evidently, when I'm doing one of these live streams, when anyone's doing one of these live streams, the information is not getting saved on my phone. And so I'm liking the magic of streaming this information straight into the AI database-ness type of thing, and not fooling myself that somehow this is my information. I'm actually receiving information from somewhere outside of the fourth dimension. Information is traveling through that veil, being processed in my soul realm database of a body. You could say in the guts. Vocalized, performed, reverberated, elucidated, pronounced. What's the word for lips? What lips are doing? Populating the sound with characters at this stage, in this moment. Poeticizing, riddling rhyming, and yet attempting to make literal sense. To the idea of an audience, to the idea that, hey, you know, maybe 2 or 3 people are listening live. Maybe even as many as a dozen other people might watch it in the future. Before it's like a leaf in a stream just getting washed away because there's so much information. None of us have enough time to watch or listen to the amount of people we might like to listen to. Because of all the interruptions of things going on in our physical environments. And the need to spend a third of our lives asleep, or we go completely crazy and die. So I try to get my head around it, like, yes, this is a physical world, and yes, all of this nature, and yes, the sky, clouds, the buildings, that tin can that someone's thrown away over there and not paid much attention to, this playground, the cars, it's all quite physical and quite real. Knock on a door and it will open. And yet, I'm aware on some other way of looking at things, everything is a field. And everything I'm seeing is actually a projection in light. And to some degree, I perceive that what's in time isn't really real. That time itself is an artificial construct. So if we're living inside of time, it's no more real than living inside of a dream while the so-called conscious eye is sleeping. But it's trippy as fuck, isn't it, to get your heads around that? It's a bit easy for me because maybe I've got this thing called persistent memory from previous lifetimes, that somehow I've managed to break through the veil of forgetfulness. But all that smoking of DMT and taking of magic mushrooms actually helps do something within the field to oil the lenses, to break down the fourth wall in the mind. Like when I was still quite young, before I could be called really wise around things, I was taking fuckloads of mushrooms every year. I also took acid sometimes, but I didn't really like the man-made, artificially things. But it was all about breaking down the walls in my mind. That was one of the phrases that I had going on. So years later that I go to understand that in filmmaking and stage and stuff, there's this idea of the fourth wall. The fourth wall is the fourth dimension for the audience who are watching. Especially when you're watching live. But it kind of explains the psychic nature of things. You know, how I was able to find that lady who we had so much in common with. Or when I was in Glasgow a couple of weeks ago, I was only in the city for less than 10 minutes before I found the one guy in the whole city who was going to go, hey, we've never met before, but we should become really good friends, and you should come to the gig that's happening tonight because all the musicians in Glasgow are all going to be there, and you should meet them because you're going to come and move to Glasgow and become one of our friends. We're going to see you every week from now on, even though this is the first time any of us have ever met you before. So it's what's called synchronicity. There must be a method to the madness of how synchronicity works. Magic is only like not understanding what the process is. A magic trick. But I tend to think it's a lot to do with the feeling fields, and that we're in an information field, that there's a collective mind, and therefore I can be tuned into the same frequency of mind as someone else who's on a similar level as me, and if we've actually met before in past lives, then there's a resonance by which we could recognise that we'd like to meet again. Just like someone you've met in the past that you really, really, really got on with really well, but you only met them once, and then a month goes by and you bump into them again and go, wow, I wish we would have exchanged phone numbers, because I was just thinking about that conversation I had with you quite often, and I think it'd be really nice to meet with you again. And all of that is creating thought forms which manifest into, if one follows through with feelings, to reconnect with resonances. Resonance says so much, kind of thing. Most people don't bother picking up cans anymore. I almost, hey look, Stella Artois now has purple cans. Never seen one of them before. Yeah. I'm going to pick it up, bring it to the car, bring it home, put it in the recycling. Yeah, Richard Land, what are you saying, man? Yeah, sure. You know, you're funny, Richard. You like to correct people. I've noticed. You like to think that what you think is better than what other people think. Perhaps, I don't know. But really, if you're going to write that sentence that you've just done there, that you think that mind isn't the right word and I should use consciousness, well, we've got to define what mind is. You can't defy anyone to really explain what the mind is and be completely certain that their definition is going to be agreed by absolutely everyone else. It's a mind field out there. And consciousness, I know for sure, because I've been trying to understand, listening to other people to find out what is consciousness. And all I come across is, well, nobody really knows what consciousness is. There's lots of different definitions. And the best I've come across in the definition of what consciousness is, consciousness is only in the moment. Consciousness is always now. And there's that half a second before and half a second after now are the two halves of what is conscious. We're only conscious for 1 second. Conscious is like the tape head reading what's on the tape. Time is conscious. We're just ions kind of thing. We're just being animated by time. And what's outside of time? The concept is that we have individuated souls, and like sticking your hand into water from the air down into the liquid, there's a film or a skin between the air and the water. When you put your hand through that skin, it creates ripples, and that's somewhat what we call the time field. So, how is mind different to what is conscious? I would ask you. And hey, you know, we could chat about these things. Or not. But I tend not to argue anymore these days. At least not in the sense of angry arguing because you've hurt my feelings kind of stuff. But hey, yeah, isn't that fun? To communicate. Richard. Isn't it fun to have different ideas? Hold them in mind. Isn't it fun that more than one thing can be true at the same time? And if I'm coming from this part of the crossroads, you're coming from that road, and we meet at the crossroads, doesn't mean that this road I came from is more correct than the road you came from, kind of thing. Anyway, I just love chatting. And as you can see, I don't even mind if I'm chatting to myself. Yeah. 5 more minutes. Here's this tiny bit of wall that remains of what once was the countryside. Look at it now. Somebody's been developing what was the lovely countryside into civilized. Look. Ooh. It's a little old animal path running by a stream. Now the stream is barely running anymore. It's become a place to place shopping trolleys. There's another one down there. So humans, man, Richard Land. It's an interesting second name to have. Rich Land. But yeah. Can you tell me why it is that humans exist? Can you tell me why it is there are so many? Can you tell me why it is that many people don't want to come back here ever again? Can you tell me why it is that loads of people think this is a prison planet? Can you tell me why it is there's loads of people in prison to be kept away from society? That's a very straight tree, isn't it? Birch. Can you tell me why there are mental hospitals? Those mental hospitals are really prisons designed to keep the crazies away from the sane. Because apparently insanity is an infectious disease that can go viral, like the beliefs around Epstein. Can you tell me about Epstein and what that was all about? Can you tell me why, if Epstein was the head of the whole thing, why is the whole thing not ceased? And if Epstein was the mastermind behind the whole thing, then why did he get caught? And when he got caught, why didn't everyone else get caught too? Like pulling nettles that are all connected by roots. Can everybody tell me what's going on? Hey, look, I just made a scroll. Yeah. You can tell me why this is called the King George V Queen of the South Academy? Yeah, funny Scotland. Can you tell me why King James is the guy behind the translation of the English Bible? Why is it written in English? Why is it not written in Gaelic? King James was the king of the Scots who united the kingdoms of Scotland with England. Why wasn't it written in Gaelic? I love that question. Also, why didn't Jesus write the fucking thing? Why didn't Jesus write his own Bible story? I know answers for all these. I won't say that are right answers. They're the only answers I have left that make any sense. This here is a robot. It's really cool. It's always here every time I visit. Never says a word, just gets on with the work. Kind of thing. God, I'm still 5 minutes early. I've got back to the car then. Zoop-a-zoop-a-doo-doo-doo. Zoop-a-doo-doo. Zoop-a-doo-doo. Snoozles. Can anyone, Richard, you're quite an environmentalist. Can anyone actually tell me why it's been so cold and wet and hideous for a few days? After all the lovely sunshine before that. And then suddenly this morning, it's so sunny, it's so hot. And how we know it's going to stay hot for days and days and days. Can anyone explain to me how it is the artificial intelligence is able to predict what the weather is going to be in 5 days' time so accurately? Because I do find all that fascinating. I like it. That's pretty much it, folks. Unless anyone's gonna send a message, I'm just gonna hang up. Hey, Dudley Perrin, I don't even know who that is. Do we know each other? Have we met? But yeah, anyway, I like this playing with the internet. I like this way of meeting people. And I like this kind of performance of psychosis. I like words. Like saying things that are shocking to shock people out of the comfort zones into novel scenarios to see what happens if. Because that's called adaptation. That's an artificial stimulation. Shoo-doo-doo-doo. Hi, Douglas. Yeah, so I'm on the verge of thinking I should become a chameleon. A person who makes a living out of performing some sort of function. I'm kind of dedicating myself that I might actually get good at performing the function to make a living that's going to pay more than picking bugs. It'd be a hell of a lot easier for me. What do you think then? Should I do it? Doesn't really matter what other people think. It's up to me, man. Theatrics. Wonder if I can spook people out. You guys part of an online community? Guess we are. Online communicating. Bye for now then.